Okay, so we just, for the Social Events Committee, thanks to Kenneth Richins, we got to watch They Live, John Carpenter classic, which you can find on Google Video, so I highly recommend you look it out. So I prepared a few remarks, which is that revolutionaries are zeros. And there's a lot going on in this film, and for any substantive analysis of this film, I highly recommend you look out Slavoj Zizek's Through the Glasses Darkly, Liberal Denial, Revisited, Revamped, and Expanded. So there's a Through the Glasses Darkly, which is about Sarah Palin, but I'd highly recommend you look up Through the Glasses Darkly, which is his newest essay, which I believe you can find on lacan.com. So I'm only going to briefly allude to that before moving on to my own subject. Just a brief, so basically I'm going to talk briefly about Zizek's analysis of ideology in the film. And then I'm going to start, just do a brief gloss of the hero's role in this film. And then I'm very briefly going to compare it to two other media. One is going to be The Dark Knight and The Joker. The other is going to be Code Geass Lelouch Rebellion, which is actually an anime. It's by Bandai, and you can actually find it on YouTube. I believe the entire series, both first season and second season, is up and free. So just covering Slavoj Zizek's analysis, right, what he points out is that we have the function of ideology very prevalently in this film. And he doesn't, I don't believe he explicitly says this, but there's two ideological trends, right? There is the general ideology, which is the hidden view that we don't see, right? The advertisement of the Caribbean, right, that hides, in fact, marry and reproduce. You know, the magazines and television shows that say, you know, no thought, obey, this is your God, on the money. Right, and so this is the zero-sum level of ideology. And of course, it's quite obvious that this functions as consumeristic capitalist ideology. But what's important to remember is this ideology functions as a background. And it in fact does not disturb our lives at all. Right? It is the zero level, and in fact appears to us not as ideology, but as its exact opposite, as non-ideology, right? And so this is the dominant ideology. But there's another current of ideology which also runs through the film. From the very start, where he moves to the park and hears the street preacher, right, and he's just hearing it, to, of course, that excruciatingly long scene where he's coming to enlightenment by putting on the glasses and then taking them off and putting them on over and over and over again, right? And the ideology in this case functions as a very clear perspective. It manifests itself as ideology. And you see it both in its function towards itself and also the response other people have towards it. So, of course, right, one needs to consciously assume, right, the glasses, the ideological glasses, right? Just like to critique capitalism, right? You'll notice capitalists never refer to capitalism. They refer to the economy. Right? And so the normal ideology is itself a zero level. It's the normal run of things. You have to consciously assume the glasses of Marxist analysis, or anarchist analysis, or socialist analysis, to in fact be able to examine the, you know, the bare level existence, to reveal itself as a fraud. But there's something very interesting about that, which is there's two people who this ideology is basically brought to. It's brought to Holly Hunter, I believe is her name, and it's also brought to Frank, the other construction worker. Now, what's really important is there's two forms of resistance. You have Holly Hunter's resistance, in which she says, you're the one with the gun, whatever you say I'm going to see it, regardless of whether I actually see it. And this is the normal liberal critique of ideology, which is the only reason you believe your ideology is because you're insane, right? And she makes this allusion to him fighting the forces of evil with glasses that only he can see. Either you're insane for being an believing in ideology, you're a fundamentalist, you're an extremist, is the usual term, left or right-wing extremist. And then, of course, the blackmail is, even if I put on these glasses, these ideological glasses, the only reason that I'll see what you see is because you're somehow coercing me. You're emotionally blackmailing into doing it, or you're a Stalinist, and in fact your society, your revolutionary society or revolutionary vanguard or revolutionary group is somehow blocking out my ability to critically think, either through implicit coercion or through, in the case of the movie, right, explicit coercion. And so, of course, right, the lesson that we should draw from this is never trust the rich to have a proper ideological position, and expect them to blackmail us into making us the radicals or the extremists.
Pro tip: people don't drive BMWs.
Right, the people don't drive BMWs. All right, it's worth noting that she does in this film. But there's another really interesting resistance that happens to ideology, and that is when he tries to get Frank to put on the glasses. Now, I mean, one of the comrades here said, "Dude, it's just a pair of glasses, just put it on." Right, and of course, right, the Communist Manifesto is just a very short book. Why not read it? Right, what's lost to that? Watching a Zizek lecture on how to be a revolutionary is only an hour. Why not do that? An RSU meeting is only 2 hours of your night, and they alternate, and they're every week. You could always make at least one. Why not do that? And you'll notice that the working class individual, right, as he says so frequently, "I got kids," and he calls him crazy, and there's this huge resistance. And the reason why is because there's this fear. There's a recognition and a fear that stems from it. And the recognition is that if I accept this ideology, I will be called to action. And of course, when you're called to action, the fear that stems from that is, and I'll get into this, this is all pretty much Zizek, me doing a more or less, good job of analyzing it. But I'll get into this more when we come to the revolutionary as a zero. But there's a fear, a legitimate fear, that when you are called to revolution, you are also called to sacrifice. And it's worth noting in the film, both heroes are sacrificed. One through the betrayal of the enlightened liberal, and one directly, right, through the repression of the state. And so the working class has a recognition and a resistance to ideology. But you'll notice that that resistance can be broken. And of course it's done in a rather coarse way in the film. But what you'll notice is it's a mutual engagement, right? On a higher ideological level, it's worth noting, Frank punches Nada, right? And so Nada, to make him understand the ideology, engages him on the same level that he's been engaged, right? And so this is a valuable lesson for the revolutionary, is to raise working class consciousness. You need to engage working class people in a manner that is working class, that is acceptable. And you'll notice, right, Nada doesn't compromise his message, right? Even though he engages him on his own level, he doesn't compromise his message. He doesn't try and sugarcoat it. He does not try and trick him into putting on the glasses. And so this is an important level of ideology. And this is going throughout the film.